What is going on, Only Playbook fans? We are back. Long hiatus. 1 month, I think, Shovit. We took a little bit of a break after the fantasy football playoffs. Now we're heading to the Super Bowl. Fantasy championships are over. Neither of us won. Shedeur won. Wow, what a surprise. Another year, another Shedeur championship in our league. But we have so much to talk about because we turned the page on last season. And the draft is less than 2 months away. We have so many prospects to break down, see how they're going to impact fantasy football heading into next year. And today, we want to talk about the best position there is in football. Show it the quarterbacks of the 2025 NFL draft. Had some time that I got to watch some film, spend some time understanding, grading, evaluating these prospects. And I know you did the same. So how are you feeling heading into the offseason? No more fantasy football. Now we get into, the meat and potatoes of draft season.
Yeah, it's a new season, ready to start over, start fresh, and do the research that we need so that we can be successful in the fantasy football realm when it starts. Because last year, a guy that came out of the draft, Jalen Daniels, proved to be a fantasy a guy that you could draft in late rounds and do really well with. So we're looking for a guy like that in this year's draft. And outside of fantasy, there's a lot of NFL teams looking to draft quarterbacks, right? You have the Titans, you have the Giants, you have the Browns, you even have the Steelers that may consider drafting a quarterback if Russell Wilson and Justin Fields don't stay on the team. So, or even if they do. So there's a lot of implications there. So lots of research that we have to do.
Yeah, it seems like based on my research, there's about 7 or 8 teams that are in a flux when it comes to quarterbacks heading into next year, whether they already have one on the roster that they're no longer confident in, whether they don't have one at all. So there's definitely quarterbacks to be had. And going through my research, I determined that this isn't the best year for the quarterback in the draft specifically. It's not super deep. I don't see a lot of blue chip prospects. So there's not really any from last year where you're like, man, you have to draft that guy 1 or 2. Now, we know the nature of the NFL. QB needy teams will take you quarterbacks and they'll take them early so that, they avoid going into a situation where they don't have one at all. So a lot of these guys will get overdrafted. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Shovit. You have a top 5 ranking. I have a top 5 ranking. I did have a couple of guys that were right outside my top 5 because I feel like outside of the top 2, and then there's a third quarterback for me, a fourth quarterback for me. 5, 6, 7 could have been any of these 3 guys, to be honest. So I don't really know how I feel about any of these people, but let's run through them real quick. I have honorable mention Riley Leonard, quarterback from Notre Dame. And then I have honorable mention Jalen Milroe, quarterback from Alabama. Now, there is so much to be enamored with when it comes to Jalen Milroe because he is so he's got all the tools, right? He's a physical freak. He can throw the football really far, throw it hard. He can run, but he's very prototypical in that with all of that comes so much lack of refinement from the quarterback position. Like he just doesn't play the quarterback position well enough to process defenses, to, adjust to blitzes and all that stuff. It's scheme dependent. So there's a lot of things that he doesn't do well that, he could get into the right situation, sit for a couple of years, and he would be awesome potentially. But also he could be somebody that turns into like you draft him in the 5th round, he becomes a backup, and then he becomes nobody. So could potentially flame out really quick. He just has to go into the right situation, in my opinion, that can take advantage of what he's good at and try to minimize what he isn't good at. So it's just another prototypical, really freak athlete quarterback that has a lot of refining to do from a mechanical standpoint. So those 2 guys were right outside my top 5. Again, it's not the deepest class. So for me to talk about a guy who's potentially top 5 in quarterbacks and he has a lot of room to improve just kind of shows you what I personally feel about this quarterback class. So those are the 2 guys that were honorable mentions. Did either of those guys make your top 5?
Yes, both of them did. And we'll talk about them soon.
All right, let's hear it then. Give me your top 5.
All right, my so number 5, I've got Riley Leonard from Notre Dame. Number 4, I've got Jaxson Dart from Ole Miss. Number 3, I've got Jalen Milroe from Alabama. Number 2, I've got Shedeur Sanders. And then number 1, I have Cam Ward from Miami.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me that your 2 of those guys are in your top 5. I think outside of the top 2, all of 3 through 7, 8, 9, 10, everywhere I look, it's different names. And I think that's the enticing or interesting part about this offseason is you're not looking at a prospect and being like, this is a surefire hit. All of these guys have good things about them and they have things that they need to improve about them. And it's really hard to know who gets put in the right situation to work on their flaws and, who gets put in a situation where, it's like the Bears and Fields, or it's like a situation like that where you're just going to go there and there's really not much you can do to improve your game. So 5 through 1, pretty solid. Let me run through my list and then we'll touch on some specifics here. Number 5, I have Quinn Ewers from Texas. Man, that was such a struggle for me. Number 4, Shovid, I have Dillon Gabriel, quarterback from Oregon. Number 3, I have Jaxson Dart, Ole Miss quarterback. Number 2, Shedeur Sanders, and number 1, Cam Ward. So 1 and 2, I think we have similarly. And if you want to talk about either one of those guys, I'll talk about the other guy. Do you have a preference on which one of Shedeur and Cam you would like to talk about?
Sure, I'll talk about the number 1 guy, Cam Ward, man.
Easy enough.
Easy enough. There's so much to like about this guy. He's got great release, incredible arm power, good ball location as well. When I was watching the film, I was realizing that he can put the ball basically anywhere, and that means that on target to the receiver where he's expecting, and move the ball where it's away from the defender. Some of those back shoulder throws. It was very nice to see, and his ability to run an RPO game consistently and well, where he was faking the handoff, like sort of jumping to get into that position and then zip the ball accurately in that slant. I was super impressed. I think the transition of the NFL is going to be guys that are athletic and can run the ball, also have the upside of passing the ball as a quarterback should, playing that point guard position. And Cam Ward really fits all of those boxes for me. Some of his knocks, I would say, kind of tries to extend the play too much, which could be a good thing, but also a bad thing because it can lead to interceptions, just bad plays all around. But there's a lot to like about this guy, especially from the accuracy and the run game itself.
Yeah, he's my number 1 quarterback as well, like I mentioned on my list. My biggest positive with Cam Ward is we watch football and we see a lot of players that are on the field and you see how fast they're moving relative to the rest of the play. And then there's players that you feel like are moving at half the speed as the rest of the team, as the rest of the field, but that's not hindering their ability. They're not like a half speed too slow. They're processing things at a slower speed in their mind than other people on the field are. That's why they're able to move a little bit slower. And that is my biggest benefit or positive with Cam Ward is he has this pocket awareness and ability where there's a free rusher coming from like the left side or free rusher coming from the right side, and he's never panicked. It's like he knows that he's going to make one step to the right or one step to the left, right? He knows exactly what he's going to do when things like that are happening, that sometimes it looks so nonchalant. It's almost like too casual, but I don't view it that way. I view it as somebody who is incredibly confident in their ability to make one guy miss or to evade the pocket, not necessarily be incredibly fast or not necessarily run over these defenders, but just have that hyper pocket awareness that where if there is a free rusher, you know how to evade that to keep your eyes downfield and still throw the football. And that's the other thing is he does a really good job of keeping his eyes down the field even while he's trying to evade the pocket. And that is what leads me into his biggest knock, Show. It is that sometimes he holds the ball too long, but we see that so much in college quarterbacks because they're all trying to just make such a big winning play to, put themselves over the top, that I don't knock it so much when they're coming into the pros. That is something you can try to teach out of somebody, is that you don't have to hold the football so long. Go through your progressions. If it's there, make the read and make the throw. So there is a lot to like with him. Absolutely. But he's by no means a perfect prospect. Again, like you said, he has erratic throws despite his ball placement being really good at times. Sometimes it just doesn't get to where you want it to get. So that I think a lot to do with this footwork and mechanical issues. And like you mentioned, obviously just holding the ball too long, the negative plays in the NFL, what we've learned is that all it takes is one sack on any given drive to ruin the entire drive and totally derail an offense. So he has to limit the ability to take those sacks, especially when you know the NFL players are going to be much faster than these guys on the edge in college football. So I like him as well as the number 1 prospect. I think if there's any guy out of all of these prospects, in my opinion, that you would, in a realistic world, give a first round grade to, I think it would be Cam Ward. I truly don't think any of the other quarterbacks, if you just stack them against like the last 5 years worth of, NFL drafted quarterbacks, I don't think anybody else in this quarterback class has a first round grade, in my opinion. So I think Cam Ward's the closest one. He's by no means perfect, but he has a lot of tools that you like, which leads me to number 2, Shedeur Sanders. And there's a lot of lists that have Sanders ahead of Cam. So it's kind of 1 and 2 between the two of them. I don't know many lists that have anybody else out inside the top 2 besides those 2 guys. And so Shedeur Sanders, I mean, household name. Deion Sanders comes over to Colorado, takes his son with him, and the rest is history, turning that program around, not necessarily from like a successful from winning perspective, but culture shift, all that good stuff, right? And if you watch Colorado this year or last year, the one thing you can take away is that their offensive line was some of the worst in college football. So it's really hard to evaluate Shedeur Sanders holding onto the football too long, trying to extend drives because of how bad this offensive line was. He virtually had no time to throw at all. So the things that I look for in Shedeur Sanders that I really like is, you talked about ball placement with Cam Ward, Shobit. I think Shedeur Sanders has some of the best accuracy of a lot of quarterbacks that I've watched, right? He has definite flaws, but his accuracy in the intermediary, his anticipatory throws are next level. And that just makes me wonder, if he has a decent offensive line where he can get to his second progression or his third progression, how much more open are those second and third read guys? Because they're not the guys getting that first read double coverage, right? And he has the ability to put the ball exactly where he wants it. So yes, he holds on to the football so long, but at the same time, his anticipatory throws, I think he's got really, really high football IQ. He gives me so much Teddy Bridgewater vibes with the way he plays football. Not the strongest, biggest arm. He's not the fastest, most agile guy, but he does just enough to get by and gets the job done. And his high football IQ is usually what leads him to have success. So that's where I think Shedeur Sanders excels, is the accuracy and his high football IQ. I think that's going to go a long way. He doesn't have a plus arm in terms of arm strength. He doesn't have plus speed for somebody that you would like to be a little bit more agile and make moves. But again, it's like a little bit taller Bryce Young, if you will, where he has the poise, he has the ability to make the anticipatory throws, he has the accuracy. He just has to trust himself and trust that his line will give him time, because that became his problem at Colorado. The line didn't give him time, so he would bail the pocket super quick. He would try to run backwards. He'd get a lot of negative plays and a bunch of sacks. So I would say with Shedeur, that was my biggest knock, but there's a lot to like with him too.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like you said, timing, accuracy, ball placement. I think he's the best out of any of the prospects that we are going to talk about, and great pocket presence too, being able to come back and forth based on how the linemen are, putting pressure. So I think those are all really good things. His comparison that I've seen is like kind of like a Jared Goff in the in sense that like he just makes the right throws and in the perfect place. And so those guys can be successful in the NFL. My only fear is that when you talk about top 5 or top 10 picks in the NFL draft, you're talking about going to a team that's not very good. And so the offensive line becomes a big issue. A guy who took 40 sacks at Colorado last year, now going into the NFL, that's quite a lot to handle. So I think that's going to be something to look at. I don't know if you would want to risk it and not get one of the top defensive backs or edge rushers in this draft, or different positions instead of Shedeur Sanders. So that's why I have him a little bit lower. I think that Cam Ward, if you draft him, you are excelling your team from day one. Like, he's going to be a starter day one, and he's going to make an impact. Shedeur Sanders, I don't know if he can make that impact right away, but coming from a football background, being a leadership guy, that goes a long ways to being a quarterback as well. So there's that plus for him.
Yeah, I think it can't be understated enough, having a guy like Deion Sanders as your father. In a family with your brothers all playing football and all that. So he has that competitive nature and that like want to win and thrive and be successful. And again, there's so many players that you see that have an immense amount of talent, but that mental aspect of their game is just not quite there. And so that's something that I don't think anybody has to have any reservations about with Shedeur. So definitely going to be the top 2 quarterbacks there in most consensus drafts. You have Riley Leonard, Jalen Milroe, and Jaxson Dart. I don't want you to talk about Jaxson Dart because I want to talk about Jaxson Dart, but talk about one of the other guys that you want to talk about.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe is next in line, number 3 for me, and from Alabama. I like Jalen Milroe a lot, and it's funny, he reminds me a lot like Justin Fields. Okay, and coming out of the draft, some may say Justin Fields is not the most accurate passer, but what he can do with his legs is electric. I mean, Jalen Milroe might have the fastest 40 dashes among all QBs. This guy is fast, and his issues are accuracy. And with that, I think a lot of it comes from bad footwork, right?
Yep.
So you see guys like Aaron Rodgers with 1 foot forward or 1 foot, like left foot forward, right foot forward. When you see him in the pocket, he's got both foot like parallel to each other, and just not good footwork. And when you're throwing the ball and mechanics and things of that nature. So I think that, let a good coach get a handle on Jalen Milroe and bring that out of him and make him an accurate passer by fixing his fundamentals, his mechanics, and complement that with this rushing upside that this guy brings in. I think the sky is the limit. He can be a problem as a NFL quarterback if they can unleash that. And for what I'm seeing, it's just footwork. And so I think the sky's the limit for this guy.
Yeah. I think the athleticism is what is to like, right? I mean, the prospect, the idea of when you draft a player in the NFL is, are you drafting an older player that has already proven what they can do, and that's what their output's going to be in the pros, or are you drafting a young guy that you are hoping you can tap into with some untapped potential? And that is what Jalen Milroe is. You are hoping that you can hone in all of his crazy physical attributes and pair that with some form of, like you said, accuracy, mechanics, footwork, even like a 1/10 improvement of what he is right now. He could turn into a very serviceable NFL quarterback. Like you said, Justin Fields, man, we saw Justin Fields time and time again just look at wide open receivers and not let go of the football. And he still currently is somewhat having a successful NFL career because he has legs and he can run with the football. So like you said, if he doesn't thrive as, the quarterback, like your franchise quarterback, I think there are packages. There is a world where Jalen Milroe, that type of specimen that he is, should have a successful NFL career. He just has to go into the right system where somebody's going to be willing to give him a chance. I still have my reservations that day in and day out, he's going to be like a starting NFL caliber quarterback. But again, prove me wrong. I mean, that's what they did with Josh Allen. I know everybody always points to Josh Allen as the outlier because he's the one guy that kind of had this physical acumen and didn't have the accuracy and tools, and they were able to coach him to have that. So that's what you hope to see out of Milroe. But like you said, when you're taking a flyer, you're going to take a flyer on somebody who has the ability to beat you at least one way. And right now, athletically, Milroe can beat you. So that is definitely something to like. Now, Jaxson Dart, that is my number 3 quarterback on my list right now. This guy continues to climb my charts because I continue to be underwhelmed by everybody, all the prospects, right? Like there's things to like, there's things to not like. We talk about Shedeur, we talk about Cam. Those are the two top flight guys for the most part, right? And even Shedeur comes with his flaws. Even Cam comes with his flaws. I don't sit here and look at like knowing the Tennessee Titans have the number 1 pick. Yes, they should probably draft quarterback, but the fact that they also have Will Levis, I'm not in here like they have to get rid of Will Levis. They have to draft one of these guys. I don't have that feeling because nowhere in my brain do I feel 100% certain that Cam Ward will turn out to be a better quarterback than Will Levis. I don't have that certainty. But what I can tell you is that what we've already seen from Will Levis, more people are going to have reason to believe that they want to move on from that because they've already seen that he isn't quite capable. And so if that's the case, then sure, Cam will go 1. But lo and behold, what I want to say with Jaxson Dart is in a quarterback class where my opinion that, there is no blue chip. There is no guy that is a surefire first round. To me, even Cam Ward doesn't have that. The guy that has the tools, that could be surrounded by the right coaching, and that plays the game a way that appeals to me is Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart runs the football when he needs to. He has a very like Patrick Mahomes-esque ability to scramble about him, where it's not like he's always looking to run. He's just running when it's convenient. He's not the fastest guy. He's a little bit bigger, so he's stronger, but he has such a like awareness to him about his game where he takes off when he needs to. He's not forcing the running like most college quarterbacks who are athletic are. They just force themselves to run. Jaxson Dart doesn't do that. Jaxson Dart has really, really nice like intermediate accuracy. He's really, really good at processing the field. He looks at the first read. If it's not there, he's looking at the second read. And a lot of times when he doesn't see those first 2 reads, he does a really good job of tucking the ball and running. He has this like gunslinger, I don't give an F type of mindset about him, that in a class where there are no blue chip prospects, he's the guy that I'm like, if I'm going to risk or take an investment for the return, right? His ADP, his opportunity cost right now, even though some people are saying he's climbing into the first round, which is insane. If you could get Jaxson Dart in the 3rd round, to me, he carries so much more value than you getting Cam Ward in the 1st round. I just think there's not that big of a disparity in what I think the top tier potential of those 2 guys can be. And you're going to get them 2 rounds apart, right? Everybody that needs a quarterback is not going to get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So Jaxson Dart to me is a nice consolation piece that you're going to get a lot later, not have to, mortgage a lot of capital to trade up for or do anything like that with. And he has so many intangibles that you can't teach. He has that brain you can't teach. He has that ability to tuck the football and run when necessary that you can't teach. And I just think he also plays with such a poise in the pocket that is also something you can't teach. And so there are so many things that I feel like are building blocks for a perennial prospect like Jaxson Dart that I would want like a coach that like I would want a Kevin O'Connell to take on Jaxson Dart and be like, I can refine some of the things because there are some top end things that I think could be elite. So that's why I have Jaxson Dart as my number 3 quarterback.
He's number 4 on my board. He's really nice. He's as far as making like reactive plays, like
Hmm.
outside of the pocket. He's got a nice touch as well. You'll see him not have to just zip it all the time.
Hmm.
He has a nice touch to get it, further than the linebacker per se
Yep.
on some of the slant routes. So he doesn't have to use that power, but he has it to his tool. And he reminds me like of Bo Nix in the running game, where he
Hmm.
doesn't have to run it, but when he
Yep.
needs to, he'll be able to move the chains and get that first down. So I think there's a lot to like about him with the scrambling and the passing ability. There are times where I felt like his reads weren't that good, as you say, in the sense that there were times where there was a wide open player downfield, and it's not wide open right away, right? It's an
Hmm.
anticipatory kind of throw where like the defensive back is maybe positioned a certain way, but with the speed of the receiver, he can throw it downfield and he would be wide open, but he doesn't make that throw, which I feel like he is kind of shying away from that deep throwing ability. I don't maybe it's just needs to be unlocked, like you said, through a coaching, and maybe because he does kind of lean his body a little bit to the left, where it's like kind of curved when he's throwing at times.
Hmm.
So I think if you have more straight posture and you're throwing the ball, you'll be more confident in making that throw, and that will unleash out of him. So I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential. Third round would be a steal for him, but he like all these other quarterbacks, they have a lot to work on, and that's just one of his things, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Who else? Who else? Did you already talk about who else do you have in your top 5? That's
So
everybody,
I've
right?
got Riley Leonard. I think I have 5 is Riley Leonard. I can't say
Okay.
his name right. Riley
Yeah.
Leonard,
Yeah. It is
and
weird to say. I don't know why.
and then Quinn Ewers is what you have for 5, right?
Okay.
So you want to talk
Yeah.
about Quinn?
Yeah. So, dude, Quinn is he was such a tough prospect for me to like evaluate. Uh, you ever watch somebody and you're just waiting for them to do something to like wow you, or waiting for them to do something to be like this? Okay. Like I saw something that gives me like some form of like positiveness about this guy moving forward. And I felt like every single game that I tried to watch with Quinn Ewers, there would be like one throw that I'd be like, okay, like that was a pretty good throw. But it would just be like it would take 10 throws for me to see another kind of good throw. And I'm just like, why is there so much inconsistency for a quarterback of the team that went to the national championship, that like had a pretty damn good roster, right? And it just felt like Quinn just needed to be a game manager for this team. And even that at times felt like it was difficult for him. And I'm like, I don't understand it, because I feel like he has pretty good brains, but his arm strength isn't quite there, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if that is what holds him back from like having confidence. There'll be like tight window throws that he won't make, right? And he'll try to loft it a little bit later, like away from the defender, because I don't know that he trusts his arm strength, but he trusts his accuracy a little bit more. So he's like, if I loft it and put some touch on it, over zip it in there, I might get it there. And it doesn't, because these guys are fast and crazy and quick. And so he tries to loft something in there, and it's just not like the defense can make a play. That is so worrisome, because the next level, these guys are going to be 10 times faster. So if he's not zipping the football in tight windows where he needs to, and he just tries to loft these balls in, 9 times out of 10, that safety is going to make a play on that football. So that is my biggest fear with Quinn, is like his pocket awareness seems okay. He's got the stature of somebody who should be able to play quarterback. It's like he has everything that you would want in a lab, but then when you go out and like let him execute that, it just seems so much to be desired. So it's one of those where he could come into the NFL, and because he has some of those prototypicalness about him for a quarterback, he could succeed. But I have a really hard time believing that lack of arm strength is going to not hold him back in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's spectacular that jumps out to you where you're like, oh, you need that guy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there are some plays where it's like that 4th and 14, like where they tie the game, and those are
Mhm.
plays you're like, oh, that's amazing, but also a great play by the receiver to make that double move. So it's like Quinn Ewers, his inconsistencies are the things that are holding him back. And I feel like even in Texas, people were ready for Arch Manning more than they
Yeah.
were for Quinn Ewers. So if you're going to draft him, are you like, do you really want the guy that really they even Texas didn't even want him, like the fans there. So it's kind of interesting to see how this is all going to play out. I think he's going to be like a Spencer Rattler kind of prospect. He's falling down the board as well. It's just, I think there's a lot to develop there and nothing spectacular. So for me, he didn't make my board for that reason.
Yeah, I think I could have probably put Milroe in there over over Ewers because Milroe at least has physical attributes that you would like in a quarterback. But there's just something about Ewers that I feel like I need to gravitate to, and I just can't quite put a pin on what it is. And so I feel like maybe I'll need to do more studying on Ewers here in the next couple of weeks. We obviously have the combine yet to come, people's pro days yet to come, right? So rankings could still change. Some guys could absolutely crush it at the combine. Their pro days could be spectacular. Some guys could come in and look like shit. So these rankings for sure will still change, but I think that 5 through 7 has a lot of room to change for me with the way the combine and pro days go. But the last guy I want to talk about, Shovit, and I don't know if you did much watching, but Dillon Gabriel from Oregon.
Yep.
This guy. So there's a lot to have reservations about. Dillon Gabriel is 5'11", so he is tiny. He's listed as 6 foot, but everywhere I like all interviews I watch and everything, they're like, this guy's not 6 foot. So no. He's definitely listed. He's definitely like 5'11". He's about 200 pounds, right? So he's not like a really, really small 5'11". He's kind of stocky for 5'11". Here's what I love about Dillon Gabriel. He has been a starter at University of Central Florida for 3 years. He was also a starter at Oklahoma for 2 years. And then he went to Oregon and he was a starter at Oregon. And everywhere he went, he got incrementally better. This guy does a really good job of running a pro style offense. He does a really good job of running RPOs, read options. He doesn't have the strongest arm naturally because of his size, but where I think he wins because of that, in spite of that, is he has Tua Tagovailoa touch with his throws. His ability to put the ball in somebody's breadbasket is unlike any other quarterback in this class. So he has, to me, when I look at somebody quarterbacking, like throwing the football, checking at the line, doing all that, there's nobody right now in this class, right, that does it better to me than Dillon Gabriel. But what holds him back is he is in like the first percentile when it comes to size. And those guys typically are never successful in the NFL, right? You're already coming into the NFL with a massive handicap, if you will. So there are Bryce Young, there's Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. Very rarely do you have examples of guys this size succeeding. But what this time around, the way I've looked at evaluating quarterbacks a little bit differently, Shovit, that maybe last year or the year before, or even 3-4 years, not just me, but maybe consensus around the NFL, people incorrectly evaluated quarterback prospects, is trying to figure out the happy medium between a player that played a lot in college that is pro ready, but maybe doesn't have tremendous upside, like a Bo Nix, right? Last year, everybody wrote him off, and look at him running an offense to perfection. And then you have a guy like Jalen Milroe, who you're banking on physical traits. You're hoping that they could grow into something. But I needed to stop discounting the guys that have been starters in college for 3-4 years that know how to run an offense. 4 years ago, whenever Kenny Pickett got drafted, Kenny Pickett to me was like somebody who in college knew how to run an offense. Everybody was like, he was the most pro ready. And in reality, he kind of was. He started. Was he a good quarterback? No, he was just capable. And I think Dillon Gabriel is better than that. I think Dillon Gabriel can run an offense. I think he can make the roads. I think he can read a defense. It's just about, will his size hold him back? That is the scariest part. You're coming into the NFL with freaks at 5'11" as a quarterback. Sometimes you can't even see over your offensive line. And I think that's the biggest reason guys like Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray struggle throwing the football right in the intermediate space, because they can't quite frankly see these receivers coming open. So that's my biggest fear with Gabriel. But to be honest with you, Shovit, from a pure who is playing the quarterback position the best, I honestly could argue that Dillon Gabriel last year played it better than anybody else in college.
Yeah, I mean, there's only this one thing, and this one thing is just throwing the ball with better anticipation, right? Where you're not waiting last minute to throw the ball and you get that completion. You're throwing it at that space where they're open, so that the receiver can make those plays. So there were signs in the tape where that was prevalent. Now, where he's where it bent like his I guess his attributes, his strengths benefit him in that is he's got a great release. He's got a really fast, quick release, great placement, accuracy. So even if it doesn't have as much zip on the ball, it can still get to where it wants to. So that comp that you said for Tua, I mean, it's spot on. I mean, not even just the fact that he's left-handed, but as far as Tua, when he came into the NFL, he had one of the quickest releases and great accuracy as well. So yeah, I think if he can just get to that point where he's more, anticipating what the receiver is going to be and throwing it right on that time that you need to throw it, prevent less sacks and all of that, then I think, yeah, you can definitely be good. It's just, right system and all of that will come into play.
Yeah. It's going to be really hard to overlook the size. Every year that we do this, I feel like I learn more and more. I talked about, not ruling out the quarterbacks that have been there in college for 4 or 5 years. You're like, okay, this guy's already the best version of himself. So when you draft him, you're going to draft him lower. And that's why you take flyers on like Anthony Richardson, because he's 20. He doesn't have the best version of himself yet, but he's a freak. So maybe he could grow into an absolute specimen, right? But I don't want to do that with Gabriel because, again, this is a quarterback class that there's not even a single guy that I'm like, I have to draft this player if I need a quarterback. I have to. I don't feel that way about a single one of these prospects. So am I taking a flyer on Jaxson Dart? Am I hoping that I can, if I have an awesome offense and I just need somebody to run that offense, man, Kyle Shanahan, I feel like would absolutely love to have Dillon Gabriel run his offense. Oh, yeah. I really think he would succeed at that. And so anybody like a McVay, if Stafford decides to retire, right? Even O'Connell, I feel like he would love somebody like Dillon Gabriel. So I don't want to write him off because of his size, because I think he does play the quarterback position really well. He has a lot higher of an IQ than a lot of these quarterbacks. He's able to check blitzes at the line, adjust his play calling, hot route his receivers even. So he does so many things that other quarterbacks just don't do because you're not asked to do that in college, but he's played in 3 different programs, 3 different pro style offenses, and he does it really well. So I don't want to knock Dillon Gabriel. I think he has a real shot to make an impact in the NFL.
I will say that on that note, though, the one quarterback that really does stand out to me is Cam Ward, man. I think he has to be a guy that you need to draft. If you're going to want to, start fresh with your quarterback, build your team around this guy. There's the knock that I said at least was the fact that he's throwing the ball erratically at times when he's trying to evade the pocket. Those are things that are, just learn to throw the ball away, right? And then your problem is solved, right? And so if you want to be in this new age offense where you have a rushing quarterback that can throw the ball as well, a guy with a strong nature that isn't going to get hurt, just things like that where I think this is the guy. Cam Ward is the guy that you need to go out and get. Out of all the other guys, not so sure on Cam Ward I am.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hope you're right. He definitely has a lot of the traits that you would want and everything that you would like. That's why he's projected to be the number 1 quarterback in the class. But I think if you had to stack Cam Ward up against last year's quarterback class, I don't even know that he would be above Bo Nix, in my opinion. So I think there'd be a chance that he'd be behind Caleb, he'd be behind Jaden Daniels, he'd be behind Drake May, he'd probably be behind JJ McCarthy, and he'd probably be behind Michael Penix. So that just me personally. So again, time will tell, but there are teams in the NFL that are going to need a quarterback. There is a lot to like with him. And again, that's what the NFL draft is. It's kind of Russian roulette. You're going to take a guy based on what you need, and you hope you can develop him into the best version of himself. And I've liked a lot of what I see from Cam Ward at Miami, so let's hope he can translate that into the NFL. Any other quarterbacks that we didn't touch on, Shobit, that you were like, hey, I kind of watched some of him, I kind of liked him, but
I mean, there's Riley Leonard, who was number 5, and I think he had really good arm talent, ball placement as well. Notre Dame did run the ball a lot last year, so there isn't like as much as tape as you want to as the other guys, but I think he's got some great scrambling ability, and we talked about Josh Allen. This guy reminds me a little bit like Josh Allen, has to work on his throwing ability a little bit more, but if he can kind of combine all this together, late round pick with the rushing upside, and improve his passing ability, I think he can also be a good quarterback as well.
He gives me Daniel Jones vibes. That was my comp for him. Is he's a little bit smaller than Daniel Jones, but very similar play style, I feel like.
Yeah.
But that is it, man. Those are the quarterbacks. I know it's not the sexiest bunch compared to last year, compared to the year with the Strouds. But still, let's hope we're wrong. Let's hope we just underappreciate these guys, and these guys all end up coming into the pros and becoming studs. Let us know what you think. Which quarterbacks do you like? Which quarterbacks don't you like? Was there anybody that we didn't talk about? Kyle McCord, Will Howard. Who are these quarterbacks that we need to be talking more about or looking more into the tape? If you're watching, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It helps spread the word. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok are where all of our socials are at The Only Playbook. I'm Sweetcar. That is my Twitter. And that is Shobit. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're back officially, regular schedules. Next week, we're going to do running backs. Boy, oh boy, it is a deep, deep class for the running back group. So a lot to talk about next week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. See you next week. Bye-bye.